Yo, what's going on, guys? And today we are back with another of these off-season previews. If you guys haven't been here before, we're gonna do the San Antonio's off-season kind of like primer preview in like a week or two after the NBA lottery, which I'll be attending for the second year in a row. But we're gonna do the full predictions. But today we're gonna run through all the like preview stuff that you should know as a Spurs fan. But before we start today's video, I want to hear your guys' predictions or top priorities that you think that the Spurs need to address as a result of this offseason. So let me know what you guys think in terms of they should address and why. And let's get to it. Like and subscribe. All right, the San Antonio Spurs, obviously the team with Victor Wembanyama. We're expecting them to maybe potentially grow a little bit quicker than we initially thought, as their squad that went 22-60, have the 5th overall pick, 35th second round pick, and the 48th as a second round pick. So for me, I think the biggest thing is just being able to, put themselves, like, the first round draft position will be obviously decided on May 12th. We'll find out there, and they actually have a 10% chance of getting the first overall pick. I really hope they go out and get Nikola Topic. I think he's like the best guard available, and he kind of fits their style of play. Or they get the Frenchman Zachary Rissache, who I think fits well. So I think either they'll draft like Topic or maybe like a wing player at the top of the draft, and then later maybe get one of the other. There's so many French players in this draft. I would not be surprised if San Antonio walks away with at least one Frenchman in this draft. Their free agents this year are Jetty Osman, and he's the only unrestricted. The rest are restricted, with David Duke Jr., Dom Barlow, and Sandro being, I suck at saying Sandro's last name, so I was going to attempt, but that's not going to happen. I expect Dom Barlow and David Duke to be back. David Duke's an animal. And we know Victor Wembanyama put up the greatest rookie season in NBA history, despite, the fact that you would say, Chet Holmgren was pretty freaking good too. But I also want to make this clear that Victor Wembanyama is already probably a top 15 player in the NBA, and it's not even like close or a joke. Like, no, dead ass, this is probably one of the top 15 players in the NBA for good measure, and he is absolutely so much fun to watch. He's the youngest player, he's the youngest player to do like so many records. But this is also, the Spurs have the youngest roster in the NBA. They have 9 dudes under 23. They ranked 9th in fewest number of games missed due to injury, and used only 22 different starting lineups this season. For comparison, the Memphis Grizzlies used 51 different starting lineups this year. The inexperience played a role into San Antonio going 13-28 in clutch games this year. The Spurs have 12 players under contract next season, and the clock to improve the roster started the night Victor Wembanyama was drafted. Like, you people don't realize, the Spurs need to approach Victor Wembanyama the same way you would approach my man, when you get a quarterback. When you get a quarterback in the draft, what you do is you approach it in the same way that, alrighty, we're going to go ahead and look at the roster, and the roster tells us this, that we need to build around a quarterback on the rookie contract because it's cheaper that way. The same thing's going on here, ladies and gentlemen, that they need to approach this as if they're finding their quarterback. And I think that's the biggest thing is like, not that as if Victor Wembanyama is a franchise quarterback under a rookie deal. So I think that's the biggest thing, is understanding that they need to put themselves in a position to be able to really maximize these next 3 years of Victor Wembanyama. And when Wembanyama's off the floor, San Antonio allows 117.3 points per 100 possessions, in contrast to 111.2 when Wembanyama's on the floor. The Spurs were 3-8 in games that Wemby did not play, and it's insane because Greg Popovich said this: I don't pretend to know what we're going to do. We have a lot of possibilities ahead of us, whether it's money in the bank or draft picks or being creative trade-wise. All those things are on the table, but aren't they for every team? I don't know why we're any different. We're just younger, and what Popovich said. But the Spurs are not like every other team. They have a 20-year-old wonderkin. I mean, that that video of the person when they're defending or Victor Wembanyama's guarding a 3-on-1 break and they don't know what to do is insane. San Antonio is obviously not like the fellow rebuilding team when it comes to Detroit. No player on this roster earns more than $30 million, but because of their higher lottery picks, San Antonio has less than $25 million in salary cap. Unless the Spurs are going to clear out significant salary, I really don't expect them to be big-time players like the Rockets were last year in free agency. The Spurs have only their own first. Their maximum room they can create is $24 million, which would mean waiving Devontae Graham or Charles Bassey, and Graham's contract becomes fully guaranteed of $12.7 million July 1st, and he's kind of like their best trade chip in terms of salary filler of players that don't matter. And there's a $2.85 million protection on Bassey that becomes guaranteed on August 1st. And the Spurs would have the $8 million room exception if they are a Cassidy's team. If they operate above the cap, it will have the $12.9 million non-taxpayer mid-level exception and the $4.7 biannual exception. So I think those are all things to keep an eye out for, as they're definitely interesting on how they play a factor into potentially what the Spurs may do. Now, we've talked about this. They're off, I think, defense, three-point shooting, and a legit ball handler. I've said the cheap option is Tyus Jones. Not cheap option, but like the veteran option, best veteran or consistent option is a Tyus Jones. So I say look at that. That's a possibility there. Seriously, it is. And the next, this is a team that they're trying to maximize. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions that need to be addressed. The first is we're looking at Wembanyama. Everyone's talking about the Trae Young connection. I agree that Trae Young is someone that they shouldn't go after. I don't think he fits. But San Antonio ranked top 10 of points allowed per 100 possessions with Wembanyama at center. Offensively, the Spurs struggle to shoot the ball with Wembanyama at power forward and center. They're shooting 34.7% from three. The team ranked 28th in three-point percentage and were 5-20 when they attempted at least 40 three-pointers. So again, we're going to go and talk about the fact that this is a team that needs three-point shooting and ball handling, primarily playmaking for others, like shot creation for teammates, facilitating. And the second is which of the players of the current roster, complement Victor Wembanyama. I think, they said Trey Jones, Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sohan, and Keldon Johnson next to Wemby averaged 127.3 points per 100 possessions per cleaning the glass. And that, I mean, I think Devin Vassell is someone you keep. I think Keldon Johnson and Jeremy Sohan you keep. Keldon Johnson's like the veteran, the elder statesman in the room. And do you really have another guy to replace him like that? I don't think so. And that's where I sit here and I'm like, it's probably in their best interest to keep Keldon. And I think he's a guy who kind of helps bridge the two gaps, the two different generations. Because Keldon was here when this was the old Spurs of years ago. So for me, I wonder what's going to happen. And I'm definitely curious, because this is a team that has the possibility of being, a quick rebuild. So third, should this San Antonio skips the steps of the rebuild and chase Trae Young or maybe even a Darius Garland, if either of those guys become available? I think the biggest thing is what are the philosophy? What are you giving up? There are a lot of things that when it comes to being able to attack or capitalize on how you're going to be able to maximize what is going on in today's NBA, which a lot of floor spacing, a lot of runs, especially in transition, and having a guy like Victor Wembanyama. Obviously, a lot of people are fantasizing over, that they need to go get an established point guard. They need to do this. I think if you can get yourself a guy like Tyus Jones, have Trae Jones back him up, and then fill the rest of the roster out with two-way players that that can get the job done, then Lord and behold, you'll be able to get something done right there. Because this will represent, I don't think they're going to go after Trae Young, Darius Garland, because when they built the teams dating back to Tim Duncan and David Robinson, I think they take the conservative approach, built in a better strategy that they know how to accomplish, which is built through the draft and through free agency and making small on the margin trades than going for a big fish. Now, And this obviously they need a buy-in from Victor Wembanyama, and Victor Wembanyama is going to probably have, hard be talk. Supposedly he's going to be having a lot of a say on what's going to happen, and I think that's the right way to go about this. I think Victor Wembanyama is a guy who definitely deserves to be included in those conversations about, how are we going to build this roster? How do we maximize the talent here so that Victor Wembanyama can play? They need to extend Devin Vassell. I would keep Zach Collins. I think he's a great backup, center, and he can also play the power forward position, which I think is huge for a team like this. So for me, I think looking at that, I get excited watching it. I think it's really cool what they're going to be able to do. And for me, I think one of the biggest things is being able to understand that a team like that is in such a powerful position with the perhaps the ability to be a playoff team next year. And again, I think it all comes down to 3-point shooting and having a primary facilitator who can also not only create shots. I think Tyus Jones really is the best fit there, and just having his brother there, who's literally the polar opposite of him, but is also a good passer and table setter. Because that's the whole thing. They don't have a table setter, and they need someone to set the table for everybody. Albeit, there isn't a guy that is like a legit franchise changing person. But the Spurs started the point guard with Jeremy Sohan, and then they went to Jones. They were outscored by 19 points per 100 possessions with Sohan, and they ranked 20th in 3-point percentage amongst reserves. So the Spurs rank only behind the Oklahoma City Thunder, who were tied with the Utah Jazz in first rounds over the next 7 years. San Antonio's owed unprotected first round picks from Atlanta in 25, 27. The Spurs can also swap the Hawks in 26. If the Raptors don't convey this year in 24, meaning if they keep their pick in the top 6, they get a top 6 protected pick in 25 or 26. San Antonio's also owed a first round pick from Charlotte, 14 and 25, and 2 second round picks. Chicago is on the top 8 protected in 26 and 27, and San Antonio has the right to swap first with Boston in 28, top 1 protected, and Dallas unprotected in 2030. And the Spurs have 15 second round picks available. That is absolutely ridiculous. But if you made it to the end of the video, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. What do you think the San Antonio Spurs are going to do, and why? And what would you guys do if you were the San Antonio Spurs? I definitely think it's an interesting situation that they're in. Their offseason really is going to rely on this. So let me hear your thoughts.